I'm Adam Siskin, and this is how you sell without selling out. Rogers that.
Hi, everybody. I'm Rogers Healy, and welcome to Rogers That, a podcast dedicated to selling without selling out. And today we have a newer friend. He's an entrepreneur. He's a CPG expert. He's in the CPG Mafia, which we're going to talk about in a second. We connected through the powers of LinkedIn and quickly hit it off and just built an affinity for each other and decided to just start making intros and helping. And in a world of selfish people, it's nice to every once in a while run into someone like Adam Siskin. You might think he looks like a young John Cusack. We're going to talk about that as well. But Adam is a wealth of knowledge. He's a connector. He has a company called the Platform CPG, which we're going to dive into. But he's one of, if not the first call, whenever I'm looking at a new deal to invest in. And he also is just strangely, eerily connected to kind of everybody. And the favors that he's done for me in just a short time are very much appreciated. So, Adam, welcome to the podcast. How did I do with my intro?
You did good. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Well, tell us, who is Adam? Maybe give us a little background on what led you to where you are today.
Sure. So I've been in the CPG arena for about 8 years. Background was in finance, did consulting, worked for Orbitz Worldwide that got bought out by Expedia, had a little tech stint that got acquired by IBM. My backstory is actually interesting. I got into the CPG arena through Craigslist. So my story is interesting. I was marketing on Craigslist for financial modeling and Excel programming while at IBM, and built a business up where once I hit six figures, I quit my job, went on my own.
So you got this from Craigslist?
From Craigslist. So I got a lot of like people in construction that would contact me asking me to build custom proposals and bidding systems. And I started to actually post to about 30 different cities. I had like 6 IP addresses that I had someone overseas run for me in order to post to that many cities. But one specific person who's been my mentor to this day, Eric Skay, was sitting at a Mets game asking me to help him with the financial model. And Eric soon became, shortly after, the CEO of Rayo's, the marinara sauce, and brought me in to help him and his CFO build out infrastructure to exit, and have done a ton of deals with Eric to this day. The latest one, working with him on Carbone that launched 5 years ago. So that's how I got into the food and beverage side. And coincidentally, Anna Wintour's stepdaughter, chief editor of Vogue magazine, also contacted me on Craigslist. And I actually launched with 2 girls at Vogue a company online called Masonette, which is a marketplace for children's clothing and apparel. So had a little stint in fashion, although I'm not that fashionable. I wear basic clothing, so I had to kind of dress up with them, but focused more in the food and beverage world, and that's how I got in.
Did you meet your wife on Craigslist?
I didn't, but I did get my wife into Anna Wintour's office in New York when she wasn't there. We snuck her in, and she got to see the inside of the Vogue building.
Wow. How cool. So what do you think your background, like your background before doing CPG and kind of the Craigslist stuff, do you think it was a good preparer for kind of what you're doing now?
I don't think it was. I mean, to some extent, I was in kind of FP&A. I did a little bit of M&A in the healthcare arena, but in my last job, I used to constantly go to the office rooms to take my Craigslist calls. And I think my bosses knew what was happening, but I was a high performer, so they stayed quiet. And when I told them what I was going to do, they laughed at me. But it ended up working out really well. So I'm happy to have made that jump on my own to figure out where I wanted to fall into and end up. And yeah, food and beverage is amazing. I'm having a great time.
Well, talk to us about the Platform CPG. And actually, a lot of y'all might not even know what the term CPG means. So let's educate the fans.
Consumer packaged goods. So anything that you sell in a package to a consumer is what would qualify as CPG. So when I entered the industry, I was playing a fractional CFO for quite some time. Very FP&A focused. So I was really peripheral. I quite honestly didn't really learn this industry until about 4 years ago when I met my current business partner, Paul Baudier, who's a former co-packer. He sold his business in 2020. Advised companies like Momofuku, Peloton, Sakara Life. So very operational. And when I met him, I felt completely lost because I was like, I don't even know what a 3PL is or how shelf life testing works on a product. And it all sounded foreign to me. And so
it's crazy. It's a different language.
It is. It really as a finance guy, I can do the modeling and the analytics and I can generally know what's happening, but I wouldn't have considered myself like an industry player until 4 or 5 years ago. So Paul and I started, we attempted actually to launch a VC fund in 2020. We failed miserably. We were told by investors, you're great operators, but you've never turned $1 into $3 before. And so we started to pivot towards a venture studio model where we would take sweat equity and also place capital. And a lot of investors were interested in that. And then we realized we don't need the capital to get the sweat equity and kind of build out the business model. So we dumped the capital side of the equation. And I would say it took about 2.5, 3 years to build out now what's the Platform CPG. Our focus is launching and commercializing brands and bringing them to market. So we do everything soup to nuts, starting with legal and shepherding the process through EIP, co-packer agreements, trademarks, IP.
Even that, you got to educate us. So the thing so my background's real estate, right? And I realize that if I go to list Adam's house in downtown Chicago, it's going to probably be a different price per square foot than a building in upstate New York, right? In the world of consumer, food, beverage, apparel, all the things that you're a part of, each vertical has a different language. Right. So when you're talking about co-packing and co-manufacturing, all that kind of stuff, maybe give us a little bit of insight as to what that even means.
Sure. So most founders are going to use a co-packer or co-manufacturer to make their products. So think about a third-party manufacturing facility that has equipment, workers that are there running different shifts, and that's where your product is being made. Each co-packer typically has a specialization. You could have a beverage focus, you can have dips and sauces, and you can have a frozen focus. And so the business model of a CPG brand is really, for the most part, to scale and grow in an asset-light model. And so by not owning your own manufacturing and shelling out all the capital to, put up a facility, a co-packer allows you to get your product made and ship it to a warehouse to be stored and then sold.
So you learn all this kind of stuff, right? And then you decide to build a business around it. Where is it because a lot of people have these great ideas and they don't know how to execute, or they have a great network, they don't know how to lead a company, or they're very creative, they don't know how to operate. Maybe they don't have a finance brain. Maybe they have a finance brain, not in consumer packaged goods. How did you kind of reel all this in and build a real business?
Yeah, so at first, Paul and I were just kind of consulting for different brands, and we saw what other groups were doing out there, and we realized that there's a lot of founders that have amazing ideas, maybe have access to capital, and have no idea how to go about the process. And so over time, we launched and created what we call our roadmap, that goes through, different phases to get your brand into the market. And, as I had started saying, legal is always the first part. And one interesting thing that we found that I tell founders all the time, my first question is, do you own your formula? So if a founder has a formula that was made for them, my first question is, do you own it? And half the time they think they own it, but they legally don't own it because they didn't include in their legal agreement with their formulator that they would own the IP ownership. And so we take kind of a phased approach with founders. And what we ask from them is two things. We want you to make sure you like the product that gets made and that you like the branding that gets done, and we'll take care of everything else.
How did you learn all that?
I learned it, I would say, trial and error, and just us as operators making mistakes or seeing others make mistakes. And being a CFO in the beginning, where I probably saw 50 to 80 companies in a different kind of capacity while working alongside Paul, who as a co-packer probably made, hundreds of different brands products. We both have kind of looked at with a different lens the various operating activities that happen in a company. And so over time, we've cultivated a strong network of, really high ROI operators around us that would allow us to reduce mistakes, as we launch these brands for entrepreneurs.
So what kind of deals do you look for? And again, I'd like for you to talk about your prowess on LinkedIn and how you've built, a legit following. And people, like, that's how I found you, is I was following you and I was really learning a lot. And then I finally just messaged you and we became buddies. But, what do you look for? Like you talk about food and beverage. Is that kind of your forte, where you talk about, the Italian sauces and ingredients and all that? Is that the stuff that you really like to specialize in?
Food and beverage is definitely our focus. We don't usually go outside of this CPG vertical just because our contacts and relationships in supply chain and in the sales world are more food and beverage focused. However, if you want to start, a clothing brand or fashion, whatever it might be, the same principles are there. Just I wouldn't be able to accelerate someone within the marketplace using my network. As it relates to LinkedIn, I posted randomly last year, and I started to kind of test it out. And I wrote this one post about Costco, breaking down all of the margins and costs. And I somehow got 75,000 views with maybe I had like 7,000 or 8,000 LinkedIn connections. I don't have Instagram, Facebook. I'm not on, Twitter, X. I don't have any social media. But when I started to see a post like that, which I've not even come close to this day, getting anywhere near those eyeballs, I was like, wow, this is interesting. And so I kept posting, trying to figure out, tone of voice. I would say today, it's a mix. I'll throw up a controversial post that I know may rattle people, may not, but it creates, good conversation. And then I'll get like really technical posts around, financial aspects or operational aspects in the industry.
Are you getting most of your leads from LinkedIn?
Actually, it started to pick up quite a bit recently. In the beginning, I would say not so much, but over time, we've definitely have gotten 2 or 3 founders that, we're bringing like 7 brands to market right now. 2 of them have originated from LinkedIn out of the 7. And then we also get, different kind of supply chain or financial projects as well. So LinkedIn has definitely been a resource in the last like 3 or 6 months that has brought about, more qualified potential clients to work with.
So what's your favorite type of company to work with?
I would say I would first focus on the founder. So a founder that is kind of willing to listen and learn and absorb what we're directing them and teaching them about the necessary steps to get into market, I think is fun for us because it's rewarding to see us being able to really lead the pack. I would also say a lot of our founders are from New York, so we actually end up becoming friends with a lot of the founders. Like we create like really good relationships, and I think that is extremely important for success. Yes, we're doing work, but like I'm also thinking about you all the time and texting and getting together in person. And so that's probably one of my favorite things about, working in this space and working with founders that kind of fit that bill.
Okay. Hardest vertical to work with.
Hardest vertical. If we talk about a CPG specific vertical, I would say either beverage, which I know you like to invest in, or a challenging product to commercialize. So a lot of founders will make a product, like we work with chefs, for example, and to educate and get them to understand that what you make in your kitchen is not necessarily commercializable, and there has to be changes, and you have to have a little give and take. And then I point out beverage as a challenge just from a product margin perspective and the amount of trade spend that is required to build a brand in a crowded shelf space. However, beverage is also what has the big headlines and the massive exits. So I would think it goes hand to hand as to how challenging it can be to build, a large business and the amount of capital needed. And then on the flip side, it's where you see like the $500 million plus exits.
After they raise 150 million.
Yeah, but that's a good exit still. If you turn 150 into 500 million at a 3x, that takes, 20 years, 25 years of compounding in the S&P. So
look at how smartest guy in consumer right there. I have to Google half the things you just said. Okay, so let's say that I have a budding brand. I have to, by the way, confession, I love fidget spinners. Let's say that I have an edible fidget spinner and I come to Adam and the Platform CPG. What does the process look like to work with my company?
Sure. So one of the first things we actually do is kick off a market study. And so think about a competitor grid that you have in a pitch deck that has 7 brands and 6 or 7 traits, and blow that out to 20 brands with like 20 to 30 different variables we look at, everything from price to macronutritional profile to sales channels, flavors. We actually usually tell a founder, like, don't sign up with us and commit to a full roadmap right away. Let's just start with a market study, which is always the first part, and make sure that the white space we're going after, as well as some of the education you're going to get from your competitors, it absorbs in. And if you still feel really good and we get to a good place where you want to launch, let's then make that leap in commitment. We then dive into legal, advise on C Corp, LLC, the pros and cons of each, go through that process with either their attorney or we can bring in, a CPG focused attorney. We then go into kind of financial materials. So if they are going to capital raise, we'll put together the pitch deck financial model. We'll join all the key pitch calls. We don't raise capital for people, so I make that very clear. I hate when, consultants will say, oh, I have a big network and I can raise you money. I never say that unless maybe it's like a $3 or $5 million client where I can show it to a family office or a VC. It's a little bit easier than a pre-rev. We go into full commercialization after that. Everything from, finding a formulator to managing that process to sourcing all the ingredients, raw materials to the co-packer, doing all the shelf life testing.
Do you have this black book?
We have like an outline that literally we've really gotten good at it. Initially it was Paul and I, and then we brought on an operating partner last year named Jonathan Beckert, who I met while working with the Snapple family. And then we now have a director of operations. We have kind of a graphic designer, project manager, and support staff. So I would say in the last 4 months, we've trained a lot of people up to, support what we do.
But I call Adam the Godfather. He's the Mafia leader of consumer. But I'm saying your black book, even if it's in your head, you mentioned the Snapple family, the Vogue family. It's like you have these access points simply from being a great person. But it's almost like, if you have someone that you want to invest in with your time and your team, they're going to have a path to figuring it out, right?
Absolutely, yeah. And it's not cheap. So typically we're working with founders that either can self-fund or founders that can raise capital. I would say if they're not self-funding, you're usually raising like $1 million, give or take, pre-revenue. As you know, consumer is expensive and building a brand is expensive. And so we are typically working with founders that have financial capability to accelerate their brand into the marketplace. And that's kind of the niche that we have focused on. But to your point, relationships are everything. I make a few posts on LinkedIn about the New York City and how it runs like a mafia. One thing I've learned, and this, I think everyone as an operator understands this, is that relationships are key. Like getting into specific retailers, getting into specific distributors, opening up like access points that are literally just relationships, which is essentially how a broker works. A broker is, has all the buyers and relationships there, and they go through the process. So very similarly, I have a lot of relationships that span across the industry in different verticals. And I've been able to really accelerate brands by setting up instant distribution in New York City, let's say with a group like Rainforest, where we work alongside them very strong. And, they have an army of salespeople where we can get the brands off the ground fast.
Man, what is the vertical? Here's a loaded question. What's the one that's yet to be like truly disrupted? It's fun. It's funny. Like over the past week, I've had like 7 peptide pitches. Everyone's putting caffeine in everything right now. They're putting protein in everything. They're putting creatine in everything. But what's the one space, maybe in food and beverage, which is your specialty, that is yet to be disrupted?
I'm going to answer the question, and what's funny about this is that I am in the process of either launching a brand that is going to do this, or I'm going to do it myself. I have a few brands. I actually don't post this on LinkedIn, but I have a few brands that I run through New York, and I run them profitably. Selling up and down the street. And the answer to your question is frozen ramen. So right now, you see a ton of QSRs with ramen, ramen bowls and all sorts of things of that nature. And so what I believe is going to be something big that has yet to be cracked is essentially a frozen ramen puck that has all the toppings that you'd put into ramen on the top that you can make inside of a pan. There's a company called Crafty Ramen in Canada that's absolutely killing it. They reached out to me on LinkedIn if I can help them come into New York City and sell, which piqued my interest. And then I had 2 different QSR concepts approach me, and it's a massive thing in Japan. So if you're in Japan in grocery, you'll see these ramen pucks that are frozen, where you can have the noodles and the toppings put on separately that are packaged separately. So everyone loves ramen. It's popping all over QSR. But like for a consumer not to go grab it.
What is QSR?
Quick service restaurant. So, all the little ramen places that you see pop up in different cities, like why isn't that done in a frozen set? You see all the dry ramen, like the dry noodles that Momofuku has and other brands, but an actual frozen ramen kit, I think can be huge. So that's one thing I'm looking into. And then I would say cottage cheese has started to really make headway. I'm helping a founder launch a cottage cheese brand right now. You see smear case ice cream on the protein side that has cottage cheese and delivers 38 grams of protein. I am launching with a founder another protein ice cream. So smear case, if you're watching this, we're coming on the market soon too. As another competitor.
All right. Flipping the question. What is the most oversaturated industry? What are you exhausted from seeing?
I would say either coffee, like RTD coffee or coffee beans. Yeah, I know you're an investor in one of them. But to start one today, because I think in the last 3 to 7 years, I would say there's been a lot of brands that have come to market and has made their stance. I think it's something that's challenging because how do you disrupt the shelf on coffee beans and an RTD when there's a lot of players that have been building at it for a long time. So that's one area that I think starting a new brand today, you have to have phenomenal branding or something to really differentiate it.
Money.
So that would be one category that I think fits that question.
Okay, and then what category are you surprised has done well?
I would say right now, Asian or ethnic sauces, that category. So you look at companies like Bachans that grew in the matter of 3, 4, 5 years to 70 million in revenue. I think there's an article that was posted last year that's fetching a $350 million valuation. Then you see, Momofuku's Chili Crunch product. So this category right now is so hot, and a lot of grocery stores are like creating specific ethnic sections with grocery programs that are allowing them to have special treatment. And so I'm surprised to see the category continuing to be as hot as it is right now.
Huh. I love it. Okay, so what's the best way to support you? Let's say somebody's listening or watching today and they've got, maybe the next big thing in consumer, and they want to potentially, bring your firm on board. What's the process look like?
Yeah, so I would say in general, like we speak to 10, let's just say like 10 brands a week between my partner and my newer partner that came on last year. Let's say collectively we speak to like 10 to 13 brands a week. The very first thing is I just love to speak with founders that have an itch to launch a brand, and whether they're ready or not, it doesn't really matter, because at the end of the day, it's hard to go jump into the deep end unless you've really absorbed it and really want to make the leap. And so as we kind of talked about, relationships is everything. So I think, first and foremost, if one has an idea and I could make a helpful intro to maybe help further your idea, or I can do something in the interim to directly support, I think just reaching out and, sharing that you have an idea, not being embarrassed if you haven't thought it through or wherever you are, because as we all know, there's nothing embarrassing about having an idea. The fact that you have one and you want to maybe, approach the market with it, I think is important. So just reaching out to me on LinkedIn or through our website, we're doing a rebrand finally, is the best way to get in touch just to talk about anything CPG.
What's the website address?
It is the Platform CPG.com. Hoping that when people see this, the rebrand is up from whatever I put up there years ago.
I love it. All right, let's talk about cliche business advice. What's the best advice you've ever received?
That's a good question. The best advice I've ever received, I would say not overextending myself, and making sure that I'm kind of centered in what I'm doing, but also ensure that externally, when it comes to hobbies and ways to decompress, whether it's the gym and things like that, to make sure I'm incorporating that through the day. I would say that that's my best advice. I'm always on the phone and doing Zoom calls, but I try to also like go walk, and if I'm not having to go on screen, I'll try to get 10, 15, 20,000 steps in. So staying active, I think, is, throughout the day, than being planted and glued to your computer, has definitely, from like a mental and energy standpoint, allowed me to, thrive and be active throughout the day.
Now, the best advice you'd give a consumer founder, a CPG founder?
Be prepared to raise a lot of money, as much as you don't want to hear that. The reality is that, if your goal and aspiration is to make an exit, it's something that you can't avoid. Yep. And then secondly, I would say, be slow and methodical, and really learn from people around you, and bring in experts. While you might not want to spend the extra 3,000 or 5,000 here or there, the reality is like you're going to save a ton of money, having guidance and doing something that's been proven and done hundreds of times by someone else, so that you're not making your mistakes and not putting the right infrastructure up front.
Love it. Last question, a loaded question, but let's talk about your legacy. You look back at the end of your career and you've helped thousands of brands, and you've helped launch frozen ramen. You've helped people turn the corner. And what you really do for a living is you give people confidence, right? But when you think about your legacy professionally, what do you want it to look like?
I would say just having the ability. I mean, at this point in my career and life, I've had some decent success, financially, and in just building a network. And at this point, I'm really looking to just work with really good people and have fun. And so I would say from like a legacy standpoint, building a community in an environment where I am allowing for connectivity to happen for everyone to prosper is really kind of what motivates me and what I enjoy day to day, that I want to make sure carries on by building out this company bigger and allowing kind of the ecosystem and everyone in it to thrive.
What a good dude. The Godfather, the Platform CPG.com. Actually, the best way to find you on LinkedIn, what's your profile name?
Just my first and last name, Adam Siskin.
Cool. Any parting words you want to leave your fans?
I would say definitely reach out, DM me. Happy to get on a quick Zoom call. I mean, in the last 24 hours, I've probably made 3 or 4 intros to a formulator or someone, in the ecosystem. So I love learning about, what people are up to and what brands they want to launch. And so I welcome, anyone to reach out.
I love it. By the time this launches, your rebrand will be complete as well. So make sure to go to the platformcpg.com, support Adam, and support founders like he's done for such a long time. And one day you'll be able to tell similar stories. So thanks for joining us today, my friend, and thanks for being a great supporter and a great friend to me.
Thank you.